Imagine for a moment that you wake up tomorrow and all of Mexico is covered in ice. No Mexico City, no Guadalajara, no Monterrey, just ice, cold enough to freeze you to the bone, and the daily struggle to survive. This isn't a Netflix movie, my friend. This actually happened 20,000 years ago, when our ancestors faced the toughest challenge in all of human history. The world was a completely different place. Giant glaciers stretched from what is now the United States to Europe. Sea levels were 394 feet lower than what we know today. It was as if nature had decided to smack us down in the most brutal way possible. But here we are, right? We survived. Not only did we survive, but we came out stronger. This is the story of how our ancestors achieved the impossible, foraging against nature when everything seemed lost. It's the story of humanity's greatest victory over the planet's most extreme forces. 20,000 years ago, our planet was in bad shape. Imagine temperatures that were up to 18 degrees Fahrenheit colder than they are now. Just to put it in perspective, if it's 59 degrees in Tijuana today, back then it would have been 23 degrees below zero. But it wasn't just in the mountains, this was true everywhere. The glaciers were monstrous. They covered all of North America, from Alaska to New York. In Europe, the ice reached as far as present-day Berlin. It was as if someone had shoved the world into a giant freezer and forgotten to take it out. With so much ice on land, ocean levels dropped drastically. So much that you could have walked from Siberia to Alaska without getting your shoes wet. In fact, that's how the first humans came to America. The Bering Strait was just a tiny land bridge. The animals we know today didn't exist back then. Instead, there were giant beasts, woolly mammoths the size of trucks, cave bears larger than SUVs, and saber-toothed tigers that would give you nightmares. Many of these animals didn't make it. They couldn't adapt to the chaos. For humans, this meant that only certain parts of the world were habitable. Small regions where the climate wasn't so harsh, like safe havens amid the storm. Most of the planet was simply unlivable. Antiquos. When the world froze, humans didn't sit around waiting for death to come. Our ancestors were tough, incredibly tough, but survival wasn't something you could accomplish overnight. They had to change everything. Where they lived, what they ate, how they organized themselves. The first thing that happened was that they had to move. The places they had lived for generations became uninhabitable. Whole families packed up what little they had and set off in search of warmer spots. It was like a massive migration, but without Google Maps and without knowing if they would find something better. Food became a huge problem. The fruits and plants they relied on disappeared. The animals they hunted either ran away or died off. They had to learn to hunt completely new animals, bigger and more dangerous. A mammoth could feed a whole group for weeks, but hunting one was a life or death game. But something amazing happened. Instead of fighting each other for scarce resources, they started to cooperate more. They realized that by working together, they had a better chance of survival. They formed larger groups, shared knowledge, and developed strategies that no one could have created alone. In Europe, we find evidence of groups living in modified caves with well-organized fires and impressive tools. In Asia, they developed group hunting techniques that enabled them to take down huge animals. In America, early inhabitants crossed entire continents following the animals. Archaeologists have found tools from this time that show remarkable intelligence and creativity. They weren't primitive as we once thought. They were innovators, engineers, top-notch survivors. Can you imagine what it felt like for our ancestors to see their world changing? If this content is blowing your mind, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell for more incredible stories like this. Surviving in the Ice Age took more than just enduring the cold. Our ancestors became extraordinary inventors. Every tool they created, every technique they developed, literally made the difference between life and death. Fire was their #1 secret weapon. But we aren't just talking about making fire. They mastered it completely. They learned how to keep fires burning for days, to carry embers with them when they moved, and to start fires even with wet materials. Without fire, survival was impossible. Tools became more specialized than ever. They developed harpoons with multiple points for fishing in icy waters. They crafted spears with bone tips, sharp enough to puncture thick mammoth hides. Bone needles enabled them to sew warmer, snug-fitting clothes. Speaking of clothing, this was a revolution. It wasn't just about throwing on pelts. They learned how to tan leather, sew complex pieces, make water-resistant boots, and hats that covered the whole head. Ice Age clothing was more advanced than much of what we wear today. Houses also changed radically. They built shelters using mammoth-bone frameworks, semi-buried huts that retained heat better, and modified natural caves to make them more livable. Some shelters could house entire families and keep them warm during the harshest winters. For hunting, they invented the bow and arrow, a technology that changed the game. They also developed spear throwers that amplified human arm strength. With these weapons, a hunter could take down large prey from a safe distance. And something super clever, they learned to preserve food. They used the natural cold as a refrigerator, smoked meat to last for months, and stored animal fat as energy reserves. These techniques allowed them to survive the toughest months of winter. Do you see how brilliant our ancestors were? If you want to keep discovering fascinating stories about humanity, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to stay updated. Young survival in the Ice Age wasn't just about having good tools. Our ancestors had to completely reinvent how they lived, worked as a team, and related to the world around them. Hunting became an art of precision and collaboration. To hunt a mammoth, you needed at least 20 people working in perfect harmony. Some would track the animal, others set traps, and the most skilled would deliver the final blow. It was like a deadly dance where everyone had a specific role to play. They became nomads out of necessity, but they were intelligent nomads. They didn't wander aimlessly. Instead, they followed specific routes, tracking animal migrations and seasonal changes. They knew exactly when and where to find food, water, and shelter. One incredible aspect was how they developed trade networks. Groups that lived hundreds of miles apart would exchange tools, materials, and knowledge. Shells have been found in caves that were days away from the ocean, indicating that they had well-established communication and trade systems. Their knowledge of the environment was encyclopedic. They could read the clouds to predict the weather, identified life-saving plants, and understood the behaviors of various animals. This knowledge was passed down through generations via stories, songs, and rituals. Cooperation reached levels we had never seen before. They formed larger clans and tribes, where each member had specific skills. Some were expert hunters, while others were master toolmakers, and some specialized in natural medicine or caring for children. They also intelligently diversified their diet. While meat was important, they also took advantage of marine resources, insects, roots, and anything else edible they could find. This dietary diversity was crucial for survival when big game was scarce. Have you ever wondered what you would do in such a situation? Do you think you would have the intelligence and resilience to survive under such extreme conditions? Amidst the struggle for survival, something extraordinary happened. Our ancestors not only preserved their humanity, but expressed it in deeper ways than ever before. Art and culture were not luxuries. They were survival tools as critical as spears and fire. The caves of Lascaux, Altamira, and Chauvet demonstrate that during the toughest times, humans continued to create beauty. But these were not just pretty pictures. They were maps showing where to find animals, calendars marking the best times to hunt, and survival manuals drawn on the walls. Music and rituals became essential to bind the community together. When your livelihood depends on cooperation with 30 other people, you need ways to forge strong bonds. Ceremonies, dances, and songs weren't just entertainment. They were the social glue that kept groups united. They developed systems of symbols and adornments that served as identifiers. Each group had its own designs on necklaces, tattoos, and clothing. This allowed them to recognize allies and strangers, which was crucial in a world where encounters with unknown individuals could be dangerous. Religion and spirituality also evolved. They created rituals to honor the animals they hunted, ceremonies to seek good luck before hunts, and traditions to remember the dead. This not only gave them hope, but reinforced social rules and cooperation. Perhaps most importantly, they used stories to convey vital knowledge. Legends about successful hunts, tales of medicinal plants, and stories about the best camping spots became living libraries passed down from parents to children. If you want to keep discovering amazing stories about how our ancestors conquered the impossible, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. The story of humanity is too captivating to miss. But it wasn't all suffering and struggle. There were pivotal moments that changed the course of humanity, turning points when things began to shift in our favor. The most significant moment occurred exactly 20,000 years ago. Scientists refer to it as the last glacial maximum. Picture your hardest situation and multiply it by 1,000. The temperatures were the lowest they had been in 100,000 years. Glaciers covered most of the habitable planet. It was a time when human extinction seemed most likely, but incredibly, it was precisely at this moment that humanity demonstrated its true potential. Instead of giving up, our ancestors became more creative, more collaborative, and more innovative than ever. They developed the most advanced technologies of the time and formed the most sophisticated communities. Around 15,000 years ago, the planet began to show signs that the ice was retreating. Slight changes in temperature, glaciers moving more slowly, and new areas becoming habitable. Our ancestors wasted no time. They immediately began to explore and colonize these new territories. It was during this period that one of the most important events in human history occurred: the colonization of the Americas. While the world was still partially frozen, groups of hunters crossed over from Asia to Alaska, and within a few generations, they spread all across the American continent. It's astounding to think they reached as far as Patagonia, while mammoths were still in Europe. It was also during this time that the first experiments with agriculture began. While full agriculture would come later, there were already groups starting to cultivate wild plants and domesticate some animals. These were the first steps toward the agricultural revolution that would change the world. Megafauna began to disappear. Mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, and other giants of the Ice Age went extinct. Some scientists believe it was due to climate change, while others attribute it to human hunting. It was likely a combination of both factors. What do you think? Do you believe our ancestors were responsible for the extinction of the mammoths, or was it simply climate change? When we look back at this incredible time, we realize that our ancestors left us lessons that are more relevant today than ever. In a world where we face our own climate challenges, we can learn a lot from those who survived the most extreme climate challenge in history. The first lesson is about the capacity for human adaptation. Our ancestors demonstrated that humans can change, evolve, and reinvent themselves when necessary. They didn't cling to old ways of doing things when they stopped working. They were flexible, creative, and open to change. The second lesson highlights the importance of cooperation. In the toughest times, individual competition didn't work. Only by working together, sharing resources and knowledge, were they able to survive. This lesson is incredibly important for us today, as we face global issues that require international cooperation. The third lesson focuses on innovation under pressure. Some of humanity's best tools and techniques were invented during the Ice Age. When you have no choice but to innovate, human creativity knows no bounds. This reminds us that challenges can be opportunities for growth and improvement. They also taught us about the importance of diversity. The groups that survived best were those that had a greater variety in their strategies, different types of food, various skills, and different ways of solving problems. Diversity is not just beautiful, it's a survival strategy. Their knowledge of the environment and climate shows us the importance of understanding and respecting nature. They knew that humans are part of the ecosystem, not its owners. They worked with nature, not against it. Finally, they taught us that culture and creativity are not luxuries, they are necessities. Even in the hardest times, they kept their humanity alive through art, music, and storytelling. This reminds us that being human is about more than just survival. So friends, when the world froze and everything seemed lost, our ancestors not only survived, they laid the groundwork for everything that came after. Every technology they developed, every strategy they crafted, and every lesson they learned contributed to making us who we are today. The Ice Age teaches us that humanity is strong, not because we are physically powerful, but because we can think, cooperate, innovate, and adapt. We are strong because we can turn our greatest challenges into opportunities for growth. The next time you face a problem that seems impossible, remember your ancestors. They faced the end of the world and overcame it with ingenuity, cooperation, and sheer determination. If they could survive the Ice Age with stone tools and fire, we can face any challenge that comes our way. This story reminds us that being human means never giving up, always seeking solutions and always caring for our community. Our ancestors gave us the greatest gift of all, proof that there is no obstacle we cannot overcome when we work together. When the world froze, we didn't just survive, we thrived. And that is the true victory of humanity.